Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask for a motion for executive session for the purpose of discussing the collective negotiations of the monitor contract. Jen and Beth, all in favor? Great, please leave here and we'll see you in the executive session link. Good.
Yeah.
I have 6:30. Okay to start? Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. I'll call the meeting to order and ask everyone to stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Thanks for being with us tonight, everybody. Happy last week of school. We do have a quick report from Jamie, and then we've moved our presentation for anybody who it can be watching or is watching to later in the meeting since we're having some trouble with streaming. So go ahead, Jamie. I know you have something about the minutes.
Yep, thanks, Jeannie. So from the June 7th board meeting under the personnel, we had a couple things. One was we have a resignation of Michelle Reynolds to accept an assistant principal position here in the same district. So her resignation date from teaching should reflect June 30th of 2021. It was just a change in date. Similarly, in the personnel, we have two teachers who are being appointed, and their appointment date, Diane Richardson and Angela Asso Carbonero, should be July 1st of 2021, not September 1st of 2021. So just 3 changes of dates.
Thank you. Right. Carlin, you are up for your final tour here.
Hi, everybody. Not much, just a few events that have happened, some coming up. We had the grad walk last Thursday. The seniors had a senior prank at the school. If any of you guys saw Mrs. Burke and Mrs. Logue and Randy all jumping in the pool, so that was really cool. And other than that, we had the 8th graders they did the walk to the high school today. So I saw the aftermath of that as I was driving back into town this morning. So that was cool. And then we had girls lacrosse team 1 sectionals last week, and the musical also did a showing this past weekend too. So that was really fun. And then graduation is this week. So very exciting, wrapping up the end of the year.
For sure. Really fun stuff to end up quite a year, huh?
Exactly.
I sent you an email. I would love, and the board would love to have your feedback on how the year went for you and how we can do things better for the person who follows. And so would love to hear from you and connect with you, via phone or any way that works out for you. So I'll thank you in advance for that, Carlin.
Thank you.
Again, great job this year. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's see, we have minutes with the changes that Jamie just mentioned up for approval. I'll ask for motions, please. Cheryl, Milton, questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. And warrants for review, Michelle and or John?
I'll make a motion to move the warrants, please.
And a second by John?
Yep.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
That carries. Thank you very much. Matt, strategic plan update?
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Farr, am I a co-host currently? Thank you. All right, I'm going to jump right into our presentation. Good evening, everyone. So tonight's strategic plan update, this is our 3rd installment of updates. We've done a fall, winter, and now spring/summer update. We took a little bit different approach for this update in particular to talk to you about our 4 goals across our strategic plan. We tried to do more of a pictorial review. There's been so much that's happened across our district, and very often pictures say a lot of words. So I think the images that we've gathered for you here this evening across our 4 goals really will speak volumes for many of the things that we've talked about all along, but talking about some very specific examples of those things. Just for our review, our 4 district goals are as follows. Again, these are the same goals we've been updating you on along the way, and we continue to engage in a variety of initiatives and activities in support of these 4 goal areas. So we'll start with our first goal. So as we know, the images on this screen are a lot of what we saw this year. We saw a range of activities happening across our classrooms, and teachers having to adapt to the unique conditions that working in the age of COVID brought us. So we see some images on the right. One of our teachers, David Franzak, working with students to deliver intervention services. We can see one of our classrooms down below him. Again, students engaging with teachers either in person or remotely. We try to do our very best to make the exceptional learning experiences that we're accustomed to delivering to our students in both an in-person and a virtual setting. One of the ways in which we try to do that is that middle icon using Seesaw. We recognized during the closure period last year that Schoology was our learning management system that we tried to really utilize across K-12. But Seesaw is more of a developmentally appropriate platform for students at the K2 level to engage with. And our teachers felt much more confident, as did our students and families, engaging and learning using that platform in particular. And I, at nauseum, updated people weekly. It started during the closure period around mid-March, and it continued weekly all the way up through the end of last week, which sadly I sent out the last instructional update of the school year. It is something we've talked a lot about. What is some of the learning that that we want to take away for ourselves in terms of continued practices? This will be one of those things that will continue. It probably will not be at the same frequency, but we really appreciate the feedback that teachers provided to us about how it served as a helpful resource and a landing page for many of the things that they would need to look up, whether it's calendars or updates or just access to resources and articles. This is one of those things that's going to stick, and I'll continue to do those probably on more of a bi-weekly or perhaps monthly basis. That remains to be seen, but we do want it to serve as a helpful resource to our staff going forward. Our second goal, continuously improving district operations. Again, a wide range of images here. Starting in the upper left, way back in the fall, we were able to have some resources to have outdoor classrooms. In the far upper left, you'll see one of the results of our Grants for Excellence proposals, which was a kindergarten, and a bit of a play on words there. And this has turned out tremendously. And I know that the teachers are very excited to continue to access this resource, not just this year, but in years going forward. Below that, you can see an image from our website in which we're trying to enhance the extent to which we're updating families about locations across the district. And this is a pretty neat piece that if you go on the website now, you can see it as you hover over the different icons. Images pop up all those exact locations on the map. And it's a pretty helpful resource for anyone that will be visiting our campus to see what is almost like a street level view of these different pieces across our district. What does that actually look like when you get there? So that should help to serve to efficiently communicate what's around the district and what's available if you're visiting for people to see. One of our greatest challenges was the dismissal process at the K-5 level, whether it was during the initial start of the school year or more recently as we shifted to 5 days of instruction. Our teachers, and it really had to be more of an all hands on deck approach to ensure the success of the dismissal manager. Our admin team, our tech team, our clerical staff really had to collaborate together to use it. And you can see some of the images of that at work right in the middle of your screen, as very efficiently and quickly. Parents would arrive to pick up their students and communicate back and forth to ensure their safe pickup and drop off each day. We had to get creative with a lot of events, obviously with our parent night. And again, here's another example of something that we've learned. We recognize that having certain opportunities that were delivered virtually, we saw a higher level of attendance for certain things. And so I think going forward, parent nights or perhaps other events that might typically be just in person, trying to efficiently and perhaps have an opportunity to have an increased exposure attendance for certain presentations, thinking about both an in-person and a virtual option for families. As we know, schedules, particularly this time of year, can get a little crazy. The last two pieces are kind of in tandem with one another. As we know, we're going to be embarking on our capital project very soon, just to improve the overall efficient operation of the district. We also heard about a building condition assessment presentation as one of our educational presentations earlier this year. Jumping to goal 3, we'll hear more about this evening with more of a specific presentation about the work of our D.E.I committee. But it was much more than just that when we're thinking about creating an equitable and inclusive school environment. In the upper left, you can see an image from women's wrestling, which was added this year, and chaired, the Section 5 chair was our own Eric Mullen, which was a great experience for students across the region. And again, just an opportunity for kids to get involved in athletics in a way that maybe they hadn't been before. Many of our staff participated in the 21-day racial equity challenge. I myself participated and was able to gain all sorts of resources and videos and things that really cause us to be reflective and thinking about the extent to which our schools are equitable and inclusive school environments. And across the bottom, we see a couple of different pieces in the center of your screen. We're accustomed to seeing Amazon boxes piled up at the spot, so it's great to see that that's been able to continue. I know Sarah Chilson and her team continue to work very hard to provide as much as we possibly can to our school community. On the left, you can see a child holding a copy of Pete the Cat, which was the result of a partnership with a Canandaigua Community Read Partnership, in which students were able to access a book such as the one held in the picture here. And again, many of our typical presentations, we again had to get creative. And we know that Jenny Kafka and Connie Fredericks Malone did an amazing job of creating a virtual experience for our Martin Luther King Assembly, which again, one of those things is typically in person, but an incredibly well done opportunity for students to be able to see, and families really to engage in a really well done presentation honoring Dr. King. As we get to our fourth goal, expanding opportunities, some of these things have happened actually more recently in the last 2 weeks. On the left-hand side, you see a graphic for Braves Bonus Wednesdays. We actually had a Braves Bonus Monday this week for students at the Academy to try to help finish up any outstanding work as we're wrapping up the school year. In the upper right, some of you were in attendance at the cardboard boat regatta. That was fantastic. The kids worked incredibly hard. We're very proud of their creations. But what a great event to see the students having some healthy competition with one another, but using creativity supported by their teachers at the CACC. A really well done event. I think everybody had a great time. In the center, you see Jenny Kafka working with Drum Club. They did their outdoor presentation and performance just this past week. And again, another example of trying to find ways to still bring new opportunities to students, despite the fact we had a variety of challenges this year. The image on the lower right is also an example of that. Typically, we have a Memorial Day parade. However, we brought the parade to Braves Field. And again, another example of a great opportunity for our community to try to think about something that we might traditionally do, but adapting it to meet our current climate of things. More of what's to come is actually in the center. We are very much in the midst right now of trying to engage in a range of summer student workshop opportunities, of which we've had over 300 responses for the near 40 sessions K-12 that we've been able to develop. It's a good problem to have. The problem is we're not going to be able to get everybody into a workshop, but it does tell us that there's interest going forward for something like this. So we're very much excited to not only thinking about what we're going to engage in this summer, but are there also before or after school opportunities next year, and even looking ahead to expanding this next summer. There's a variety of great workshops, from things like building rockets and CO2 dragsters to financial literacy, to even what's been deemed a K-1 cadet camp to try to help kids get a leg up to start next school year. Well, what is it like to do school all over again? So we're excited to see how all of this is going to go. And this is already in addition to our typical summer programming. So this enhancement and new opportunity, I think, is going to serve our community well. And we're looking forward to see what the end result of that is going to be. We see 3 images from our graduation speakers. And again, if you haven't had a chance to see these, I know that many of us have, or were in attendance that evening. Some fantastic work by our students, and I really feel are amazing examples of what our kids are doing each day. And there's so much to be proud of here. And so we're going to see all of our students at graduation have that opportunity to cross the stage and have that capstone experience of Canandaigua Academy coming up this weekend. So with that, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. I will unshare my screen so we can see one another.
Questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Matt. That was really exciting.
Thank you.
And I just want to echo, those graduation speakers were absolutely outstanding. That was a really special event, and they did a terrific job. All right, let's see. We have our consensus agenda and supplementals. I'll ask for motions, please. Beth and Jen, questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. And I think we're on to our presentation now. So.
All right.
Yeah.
We are not streaming still, unfortunately. Dan is working on it. It's not working. So I don't know. Perhaps it has something to do with the storms that rolled through. I know some people lost power, but we've been working on it, and for whatever reason, it's not working. But we are recording this, and we will make it available for folks tomorrow who obviously weren't able to watch this. Deb, if you can hear me, I'm going to make you a co-host. Perhaps that might allow you to try to stream it while we're doing the presentation if it works that way. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. So I'm going to share my screen momentarily. Everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, I just want to arrange my screen here so I can see all of you a little better. So thank you so much. I'd like to propose a potential plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion. As many of you know, this is a journey we've been on for a while now, and not just Canandaigua, but many places have. When I thought about this presentation tonight, I thought about kind of Canandaigua's history around equity, around inclusion. And it's a deep history. As many of you know, Frederick Douglass spoke here around ideals specific to equity and inclusion. Susan B. Anthony stood trial here in Canandaigua specific to an ability to vote. And this is where the Canandaigua Treaty occurred between the federal government and the 6 Iroquois Indian nations in Canandaigua. And so we have a deep, rich history of making a stance for equity and inclusion. And what we actually did this year is we set out with a committee to really endeavor about what a plan could look like for our district to help sustain an equitable and inclusive school environment. And so we'll talk a bit about that. In fact, I'll talk a bit, and so will Julianne Miller, who was our board education representative to multiple committees. But really, that's what we asked the committee to do, is to come together and create a plan and really focus on also New York State Education Department's culturally responsive framework of teaching and learning. How do we support that framework, and how do we support DEI within this district? And to propose the plan to the Board of Education for your potential endorsement. As the committee started to work, they really focused immediately on 2 things, our vision and our mission. And many of you, I think all of you, were around when we set out to revision our vision and mission just a few years ago. We did listening tours throughout the community, multiple tours throughout the community where we invited anybody, students, staff, parents, community members, to share with us what they believe to be really important pieces that we should have within our vision and mission. And what you see in front of you now is our district vision and mission. Our vision is one community transforming lives. And when you look into that description, we've highlighted some words that really resonate in the mirror of DEI. So a community rooted in inclusion and love. That's our roots. That everyone is included and everyone feels love. That's within our vision. Additionally, they play an active role. Everyone plays an active role in creating that one community transforming lives. And when I say everyone, literally, quite literally, everyone. When we look at our mission, explore, enrich, and empower, again, we've highlighted some words, enriched world-class educational experiences. And if we aren't thinking about academics and education through a worldwide view, it's a narrow scope. And what we want our students and our community to see is that there's so much more out there beyond Canandaigua. Yes, we love Canandaigua, and there's so many great things here, but there's so much more out there. And to be, to have interaction with, to dialogue with all the diversity that exists out there is incredibly important if we want to have an enriched world-class experience, because many of our students will leave Canandaigua and they will be in other places around the country or perhaps around the world. And we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't really make that part of their experience here in Canandaigua. We want to engage all learners, all of our students, regardless of their background, regardless of their upbringing, regardless of their individual story. We want to engage all of them. And we want to make sure all of our community members have a voice and it's heard. No matter what that voice is, that it's part of our community, it's part of what we do. And so as the committee worked, and I'll talk a bit about who's in the committee towards the end of the presentation because I'd like to thank them for all the work that they put in. they really focused on our vision and our mission as a central point. And there's so many aspects to it that really speaks to equity and inclusion. So what specifically are we talking about? When we talk about our DEI plan, what are we discussing? And this list isn't by any stretch or imagination everything, but it's race, it's ethnicity, it's socioeconomic status, it's LGBTQ+, it's special education, it's religion. The list really does go on, but it's recognizing that all of our students, all of our staff, and all of our families may have a unique story specific to their identity. And we want them to feel included and involved every step of the way, and supported and loved and nurtured. And sometimes through kind of traditional forms of academia and education, sometimes they don't see themselves within the content and the curriculum that they're learning. And so we want to take a look at that. We want to truly understand and support all of our students regardless of their individual story. So an easy example, when people are really kind of confused by some of this, an easy example that I like to start with is, we look at Canandaigua's history in terms of socioeconomic status, for example. If you ask most people in the Rochester area, to define Canandaigua in terms of wealth, a lot of people immediately say, oh, it's a wealthy district. And I suppose at one point it was, probably 20 or 30 years ago, I suppose it was a wealthy district. And not that there isn't a lot of wealth here, because there is, but there's so much more to that story. And you all remember 3 years ago on opening day, we presented to our staff the changing demographics of our school system. And our poverty has risen at such a rapid rate just in the last 10 years. In fact, when I share with people that, our poverty rate is nearing 40% of families, and when I say poverty, I'm really talking about the designator free and reduced lunch, students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. About 40% of our students at the primary elementary school now qualify for free lunch. That is significantly higher than what it was 10 years ago. It was less than half that. And so, we see this increasing population who are living in poverty. And when I think about some of the things that the district does at a level of excellence, which we do many things at a level of excellence, we're very proud of that. But I've listed a few here. When I think about things like band or orchestra, when I think about lacrosse, hockey, alpine skiing, and I start looking at those students who are involved when they're juniors and seniors, so they've stuck with it all the way through to the end, very rarely is there anybody in there that would be classified as in the socioeconomically disadvantaged category, because it's too expensive. It's too expensive with fiscal cost and time. Just thinking about lacrosse alone, they travel all the time, almost every weekend. And to be able to really hone that skill to be a contributor to the team, if you're not traveling often and dedicating the time and the energy and the fiscal resources, you're probably not going to be a contributor by the time you get to high school. And so that's an issue that we need to address. That's something we need to level the playing field for all of our students, so they all have access, they can all access those things. And so when I explain it in that way, people typically understand it, but that's such a basic example. There are droves of examples that we as a district, and this is not just a Canandaigua thing, but we as a district need to find avenues to do better and to service our students in a much more accessible way. And so I'll turn it over to Julianne for a few slides here. Julianne, if you just want to let me know when you want me to flip to the next slide, have at it.
Thank you, Jamie. There are so many different examples that we can point to of why this work is important in our district and how individual students and our community as a whole are affected by it. The ones that Jamie talked about were obviously extremely important. We also note that students who identify with underrepresented or historically marginalized communities often find that their experiences and their identities are really missing from their educational experience. Whether we talk about what they're reading in English classes or ELA classes from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade, or we talk about what they're learning in history classes, or even what they're learning in science or math or music, that they don't see themselves in those classes and in that curriculum. And we know from a lot of studies that we've seen that that has a detrimental impact on their educational experience, that students need to feel like a seen and valued member of the community. And what happens in the classroom makes a big difference in creating that experience. At the same time, this doesn't just affect students who identify with those groups. All of our students benefit when we create a more inclusive curriculum, when they have the opportunity to learn from a variety of voices, a variety of ways of looking at the world, to understand a variety of experiences that aren't their own. Everybody benefits from that academically and beyond that, in terms of the skill set that they walk out with when they graduate from the academy, and their ability to engage in diverse communities in college, in the workplace, in volunteer opportunities. The more that they have been exposed to in terms of different voices and different perspectives, the more successful they will be in all of those areas. Jamie, we can go to the next one. Thank you. So the DEI task force spent a lot of time discussing what it was that we were trying to accomplish with this work in Canandaigua, recognizing the strengths of our community and recognizing where we still have opportunities to grow. And we identified 3 main goals that really we felt needed to drive this work. And the first one was affirming the dignity and humanity of all people, not despite our differences, but because of our differences, embracing our differences. And this can and should happen across the board. This can happen and should happen curricularly, but it also can and should happen in interpersonal relationships, in the relationships that students form with each other, in the relationships between teachers and students, and really everybody who works in our district, staff with each other, that all of those relationships, in addition to all of our policies and curriculum, need to actively affirm the dignity and humanity of all people. The second one is embracing the historical truths of all people in order to develop perspective. That we don't want our students to graduate from Canandaigua Academy with one way of looking at the world and one way of understanding experience and understanding history. That history, and this might be partially the former history teacher in me, history is messy. It is not one clear perspective and one straightforward story that takes you from point A to point B. And that all of our teaching and learning and the way we interact with each other needs to recognize that and to embrace that. And all of us will end up richer as a community for having done that and for having had the opportunity to learn from different people's stories and perspectives and understand the world in multiple ways. The third is that we need as a community to recognize and confront bias and discrimination and inequity in our community. We know, unfortunately, that in addition to all of the positive experiences students have in Canandaigua, that students and staff do experience bias and do experience discrimination in our community. And we all believe that that should never happen. That on a just a human level, people shouldn't have to be dealing with that. And on an educational level, we know that students won't learn as well when they are also struggling with the effects of bias or hate or discrimination, that those kinds of experiences interfere with the learning process. And so on both just a human and a communal level and also an educational level, we need to recognize those situations when they arise, and we need to have a clear and accessible way of dealing with them. It can't be hard for people to have to share those experiences so that we can address them. So as we started looking at the work that we believe needs to be done, we believe that there are basically 5 areas that we need to look at through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. The first is student experiences, some of which I've already been talking about. That in order for all students to achieve, they need to encounter a welcoming and affirming environment where they feel that they are valued and valuable members of the community, and where they encounter a rigorous and inclusive curriculum. That as they walk through their day, all of the different learning opportunities they encounter, all of the different people they encounter, all of those things need to be looked at through a lens of equity and a lens of inclusion, so that everybody has that experience that Jamie was talking about at the beginning, an experience of our community as rooted in inclusion and love. The second area is teaching and learning. That we need to look at our curriculum and make sure that it represents and includes a broad range of voices and stories and ways of understanding the world. And we need to make sure that all of our learning spaces, broadly defined, right? Classrooms, playing fields, clubs, all of those learning spaces are free from both explicit and implicit bias. We need to look at our leadership and staff. We need to work on hiring and retaining a diverse and highly qualified faculty and staff, and think about ways that we can increase the diversity of our staff community. And we need to provide ongoing and meaningful professional development for everybody to have the opportunity to learn about issues connected to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We need to review our policies and procedures as a district through an equity lens, paying specific attention to how do these policies, how do these procedures play out through the lens of equity? Are there things that we are missing? Are there ways that policies or procedures are affecting our community in ways that we haven't anticipated? But to really take the time to look for those unanticipated consequences of some of our policies and procedures. And we need to look at family and community. We need to make sure that all families are engaged in meaningful ways and accessible ways with our district, and that they, just like I was saying with students, feel seen and valued, not despite their identity, but with their identity, that they have the opportunity to bring their full and authentic selves into our buildings and into our spaces and into our community. And we need to continue to develop our community partnerships. We already have so many wonderful ones, but continue to develop them to make sure that they are culturally inclusive and culturally enriching, and that we are taking advantage of all of the opportunities we have, both within Canandaigua itself and also in our broader region, to really enrich the experiences of our students. So with all of that in mind, we've identified 3 tasks that we think that the district needs to focus on in the coming year. The first is to complete an equity audit, to really take the time and bring in hopefully some experts who can help us, because it's always a little bit challenging to audit yourself, to really look at everything from our policies and procedures to our curriculum, to the experiences of students and families, to take the time to have those conversations, to really understand what the issues are that we face. We can all identify anecdotally issues that we believe need to address, but we need really clear data to help us develop the best plan that really fits our needs as a district. So we believe that that audit needs to happen, and that we need to then use the results of that audit to inform the creation of an action plan that we would develop for the following year and years coming after that. We know from talking to a lot of districts who are engaged in this work, this isn't a 1-year process. It's not even a 2-year process. This is a long process. And we want to start it with the best data that we can get to inform how we go about that process. The second thing that we think needs to happen in the coming year is the creation of professional learning opportunities for staff in our district. And this can happen in a variety of different ways and should happen in a variety of different ways based on people's different jobs, the buildings they work in, the ages of students they work with. But to create the opportunity for curriculum area teams or grade level teams or administrative level teams to engage in professional learning around issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion so that we all have the base of knowledge that we need to do this work in a meaningful way for our students and our families. And the third thing we think is really an immediate task is to develop a bias incident response protocol for staff, for students, and for families. We know that students are hurt by bias incidents, and we don't want to allow that to continue. We need to have a process for reporting incidents either that have happened to you or that you have seen, whether you're a student or a staff member or a parent of a student who's experienced something or seen something. We need a process that is clear, that is accessible, and that is supportive for students or staff who are facing issues of bias. And while we do believe that gathering that data is extremely important for developing the plan moving forward, we can't continue to allow those incidents that happen when we know that there are students who are hurt by bias incidents. And so we feel that that really needs to happen in the next year, as soon as we can.
Thanks, Julianne. And thank you to you. Thank you to Mr. Tenney for chairing the committee and all of this work. And so I'm going to jump back in here and just kind of talk a little bit about within the plan. And you have the detailed plan. It's in the board packet. It's on our website. Anybody can view it. There's a structure and sustainability in place or recommendations. One would be, and I referenced a couple of different groups, but one would be a DEI advisory group. It's a smaller group that is made up of a variety of stakeholders, from staff, administration, board members, community members. We would like to bring students on board into that now as well. That really kind of looks at our DEI goals throughout the year and watches our progress towards those goals, kind of holds us accountable towards our progress towards those goals. Beyond that, though, we would then have, there was a very large DEI group of almost 55 people. That's a hard structure to operate within. And so we really appreciate all of their input in designing this plan. And that group will come together on occasion to reflect, discuss, gain insight to help us move forward, maybe once or twice a year. But how it will be sustained in the buildings is a branch off of the school improvement teams. So our SIP teams, remember, one of our district goals, of our 4 district goals, is develop a more equitable and inclusive school environment. So there would be a subcommittee of SIP that holds us accountable for all 4 of our goals that would really focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they will look at that DEI district level goal and they will support it within their building. And there'll be a representative on those building teams that's in the advisory group, the district level advisory group. And so there'll be continuity of conversation and intent. And so that's kind of how we hope we would be able to sustain this work moving forward. As Julianne said, this is not a 1 or 2 or 3 year process. This is an endeavor that you commit to and we continue to work towards. And so that's kind of the structure and sustainability piece. I mentioned there was 55 people. This is the list of all the people that joined regular ongoing Zoom meetings throughout the course of the year to develop this plan. The group is, the list is long, as you can see. This was also done in conjunction with the city of Canandaigua. This Mayor Palumbo and some of his, his folks that he relies on joined us for meetings. And we worked with the Finger Lakes Community College, Sim Covington joined us for meetings. And so we tried to make it a community effort with a lot of insight and a lot of input. And so we appreciate the city of Canandaigua's involvement, and because they're committed to this work too, and we're committed alongside of them. And then I mentioned the advisory group, the smaller group that worked closely, and they met at times, they were meeting weekly, really trying to take everything they were hearing from the big group and kind of filter it down into a plan. I know the big group at one point, we invited former graduates to come, former graduates of diversity, and we just wanted to hear about their experiences. And that was an eye-opening evening. That was a difficult evening, to be honest, but we're so thankful we did it. And so this was the smaller group that met, like I said, weekly, and really tried to develop that plan to present to you here and now. And so, you know, a lot of people working, and a lot of people, you know, really believing in this work. And so we appreciate all of their efforts that they put forth. And so, you know, as I think about equity and inclusion, I think, you know, in a lot of ways, Canandaigua has experienced a lot of success in that regard. And in a lot of ways, we have areas to grow. But most recently, we have a senior who gave a speech, and he's been with us for 4 years. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to play that for you. And I know not everybody has heard the speech, but, you know, I would like to play Mohammed's speech that he gave at the Caps and Cars event and Senior Sunset event about a week ago. We released it on social media today, and I think it's important for everyone to hear. And so I'll do that now. And if the volume is not loud enough, please let me know.
Hello, everyone. Hey. For those of you who might know who I am, my name is Mohammed. My family moved to Canandaigua 4 years ago, and my brother Asman and I have been going to school at the Academy ever since. My time at the Academy has been wonderful and filled with opportunity, and I worked hard to take advantage of what the school and community offered to me. The Academy has been a real blessing to me, especially once you learn my personal story. Let me tell you a little bit about that. I was only 8 years old when the war started in Syria. The military started to bomb schools, so no one would go to school anymore. People left Aleppo to live somewhere else, but we stayed because my family didn't have enough money to move anywhere. In September 2011, we were sleeping at 2 o'clock in the morning. We heard a really loud noise. Then all I felt was that there were rocks falling all over me and my family, and I passed out. I woke up and I found my family in the hospital. Half of my family members were missing. We didn't stop looking for them. We looked in each and every hospital to find them, but we were out of luck and we thought they died. We suffered so much and we had to work so hard because half of my family were missing and we didn't have a house to live in anymore. Our house was destroyed by the bomb, so we had to make a little house with ground cloth and work. I was so injured that I couldn't really work or do anything. I had cuts over most of my body. I couldn't move my left hand because the doctors in Aleppo didn't do a very good job. They only stitched my fingers and wrapped my arm before they discharged me. I couldn't stay in the hospital because there were a lot of people who got hurt and needed help. My dad, Ahmed, had a severe back injury, and my brother, Hamza, had leg injury. So none of us could really work. We had to get help from the Red Cross to survive because we nearly lost everything. After a while, my hand kept hurting me and I couldn't get it to heal or to move. My dad took me to the hospital again, where they told him that I had to take me to a specialist. And those doctors were not available in Aleppo. For me to see a specialist doctor, we had to move somewhere called Tartus. After my dad got better, he had to make us money. My dad used to have a small upholstery shop in Syria. He had to sell it for so little because we had to go to Tartus for me to see a special doctor for a treatment. My dad decided to stay in Tartus because it was so expensive to travel back and forth. After a while, my dad and my brother Hamza started working. Soon we heard people saying we could sign up to move to Turkey because it was so much safer and people helped you a lot. A couple of months later, we ended up in Turkey, but Turkish people didn't help us a lot. However, they had these camps for refugees. So we stayed in camps for a while until we saved up some money to live in a better place. After my hand got better, we all started working. My dad found me a job as a mechanic. I used to help workers out by giving them tools and cleaning up after them. I started learning Turkish from other workers. It was so hard to work in a place where I didn't even understand what others were saying. But I'm glad I picked up the work. One time I was working at a shop and the kid who only spoke Arabic came in looking for a job. So my boss called me over so I could translate. I started talking to the kid. I asked him questions and translated to my boss. I asked him for his name and he said his name is Osman. I know my brother's name was Osman. So I started asking him more specific questions. Where are you from? And how did you end up here? And the story was just like mine. So I asked him for his mom's name. He wouldn't give it to me. But I kept bugging him. Then he said my mom's name is Dalal. I couldn't believe it. This stranger was actually my brother. He didn't believe me. We had not seen each other for about 4 years. I told him my name is Muhammad. Asman was shocked. We both started crying. That was the biggest day of my life so far. I will never forget it because it was such a miracle. After that, we became a family again. Asman brought me to my mom, my sister Neslihan, and my oldest brother Abdul. I took all of them to the camp where my dad, my brother Hamza, and I lived. My dad couldn't believe what he saw. When he saw my mom, Abdul, and Neslihan again, he started crying half tears when we were all reunited. My mom said she knew a place where people could sign up to go to America. However, only people who had health problems were eligible. Because of my hand injury and my grandparents' ages, we were accepted for the program. We had to go over 30 meetings to get information and to make sure that we're not going to America to harm other people. We had to prove that we just wanted a home to stay in because we lost everything in the war. When we finally were able to come to the United States in 2016, people met us at the Rochester airport and took us to a really beautiful house. They said we will live in it and we wouldn't have to pay anything until we get settled. Plus, it was filled with food and we were really hungry. So when my dad found the steak of pepperoni, he started cutting it up and mixing it with eggs. We are Muslims and we're not allowed to eat pork, but my family didn't know the culture of the food of America, so we ate everything, even though it was pork. We now know we shouldn't eat pepperoni or bacon, even though they are delicious. 4 months later, the people who helped my family to settle in Rochester signed us up to go to school, but the school we went to wasn't the best. We couldn't really pick up English because the students at that school spoke different languages. Only teacher talked to us in English. So she had to help 30 kids in one class. It was so frustrating. Also, some kids would make fun of my left hand because I only had 3 fingers. It really bothered me, and that's why I didn't want to go to school up in Rochester. A woman named Grada, who helped my family live in Canandaigua. My family moved here and then we were signed up to go to school here in Canandaigua. It was so much better. People here treated us so much better. One time I got lost in the school and there was a kid who walked me to my class, but I didn't even know him. That's how nice people are. When I first started going to school in Canandaigua, my counselor, Mrs. Jones, used to come at the end of every period to walk my brothers and me from class to class. I really loved how teachers and students treat others here, whether it was Mrs. Bond teaching me English and looking out for me and my family, Mrs. Brown helping me with my reading, Mrs. Landon helping me with my presentation and my homework, Mrs. Webb giving me lots of good advice about my future career. Mr. Berry helping me with my singing and building my confidence. Or Mr. Sisson, who helped me with my writing. They all showed me so much respect. Now Canandaigua feels like heaven to me. Before we moved here, we went through many challenges. I wanted to make my dream come true because I know if I kept working hard, getting help from my teacher, and giving my full effort in school to get my diploma to make my future amazing. So my fellow seniors, please learn this lesson from my story. We all face challenges, but you can overcome times in your life that are challenging. You can find success, you work hard, make the most of what you have learned at Canandaigua Academy. We are all very blessed that we have done such a wonderful school. Thank you all so much. I wish you all the best.
So thanks for allowing me to do that. I share it for a couple of reasons, and a few things kind of stick out to me when I watch it. One would be, I remember meeting Mohammed and Ozzy and Neslihana when they moved here, and none of them spoke English. And 4 years later, he's giving a commencement address in English. And so kudos to our staff and to that family for all they've done to find success and to do what they've done to get to this point. You saw at the end that the stadium was full. It was silent during his speech. He captivated them with his story, and it's compelling. And I think the third thing that really stands out the most to me is I really hope that every one of our students feel the love and support that the Dunlockys have felt here in Canandaigua. And I know that's not the case for all of our students. It's the case for many of our students, but it's not the case for all of our students. And that's really, when I think about our DEI plan, to develop a more equitable and inclusive school environment, is to give every student, every family, every staff member the love and support that Mohammed and his family felt when they came here. That's the basis of what we're trying to do. And with that, I'll stop talking and open it up to any questions.
Questions or comments from the board? It does leave one a little silent, doesn't it? So I guess it would be helpful, Jamie and Julianne, to understand what you need from us.
Thanks, Jeannie. For me, it's to know that the board endorses the plan that the DEI committee put forth. And as you heard Julianne say, there are 3 goals they'd like us to accomplish next year: an equity audit, engage in professional learning, and come up with a bias protocol, incidence of bias protocol. Those are the 3 items they would like to see us engage in next year. You also saw the structures for sustainability. If the board can endorse and support the plan as presented and within the document, we'll start moving.
Is that a sort of verbal okay? Do you need a vote? Is it at this meeting? Is it a future meeting? What's ideal for you?
Really, it's based on your comfort level. I would like to, even if I had a thumbs up from the board and I saw everybody's on board with this, or the majority is, that will give us our direction.
Anybody have any concerns that they want to raise at this time? Okay. Well, thank you. That's really meaningful, good, important work. Milton, did you raise your hand? Please.
So there was a consultant mentioned. Do we have a sense of how much something like that's going to cost? Is that something that is done locally, or how does that work out?
Thanks, Milton. Great question. We've actually explored, other districts have engaged in an equity audit through a consultant. And Vern has reached out to a variety of those places to kind of see who they use. Some are using the University of Rochester. And so what I've asked is for Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES to do an RFP for companies willing to do equity audits, They can evaluate the submittals and perhaps even have 2, 3, or 4 different companies that districts go through. Of course, if it goes through Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES, we could then receive aid based on a percentage of what we spend. But the 2 companies we're aware of at this time is the University of Rochester and then Gates Chi-Li. They did this 3 or 4 years ago prior to University of Rochester, and they use NYU. And so those are 2 that we're aware of. And we know there's some private organizations that do it. We haven't really explored that all that much. Our interest level has been at academia and academic institutions, but that certainly wouldn't rule out if there was a private company that we heard good things about and they had a lot of good things to say about their services. But again, I'll go back to about a month ago, I reached out to BOCES and said, we do RFP for this service and come up with a menu of options that we could have. They said it was very interesting and they wanted to do that. And I also pitched the idea of, some larger districts and universities have diversity, equity, and inclusion officers. It's their whole job. And, would BOCES hire diversity, equity, and inclusion officers that districts could contract with and help co-lead the work? I wouldn't want to say that they would independently lead the work, because if we're heading down the path of doing this work, we need to own it, but could help guide us in a kind of chair or co-leading fashion. And they like that idea too, and said they were going to bring it back to their committees to hopefully discuss. So I need to follow up with them to see where they are. I just didn't want to go too far down that road without doing this presentation here tonight to see where the board felt on all of it.
Any other questions, comments, Jen?
So how does the board get involved?
That's a great question. I would just say thank you, a major thank you to Julianne. She brings such a valuable insight, and she's just so attuned to all of this. She's been an integral part. How can the board get involved? Right now, I would say as we develop things, well, for starters, when we do the equity audit, the findings will be brought to the board for discussion around future planning. And so that's a piece where the board will be involved. Professional learning. We see book studies, dialogue, workshops, professional learning opportunities for our leaders, our staff, and for board. By all means, we have a book that we're already going to do as a leadership team. This summer, we're going to start, and so we can order extra copies if any board members are interested in reading that as well. Typically, you are. So Matt, you heard that. We'll order some extra copies. I know Matt did get some extra copies just in case. And then when we create this protocol, we'll really want to know your thoughts and insights there as well. And so those are some pretty easy ways to be involved. If you have interest in being involved beyond that, reach out to me, and we'll talk about what we can do to help meet that need for you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? I think you've got the thumbs up to proceed.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone, and thank you to the larger committee for all of your work. Let's see, I think we're up to district committee reports. We have CIE. Jen, did you want to report out on that, please?
I will do so very quickly. We had the FOSS science pilot update with my favorite Karens, Karen Palomini and Karen Sam once again. I think we need to keep extending this pilot so I can keep hearing from them. Excellent work, and we talked how it will be extended next year. We have final world language recommendations. Some of the recommendations coming out of that have some budget implications, things like travel, potentially starting some instruction in earlier grades that need to be thought through a little more clearly, but it was an excellent presentation and set of recommendations that I think can help the district in the future. And then finally, we had a professional learning plan update from Katie. She's so dedicated, she did it by video. Really talking about how updates to the plan are made typically in appendices. And then finally, Matt rounded it out with some discussion on the funding that's coming out from the CARES Act and other things related to the pandemic and how that might be used. And the highlight of that we've already heard about today was the summer learning offerings, and those got me quite excited. And I'm really proud of the faculty and staff in the district that are willing to step up to the plate and do something in the summer when we've all had a very long year. So I'm just terribly impressed by that. I don't know, Matt, if there's anything that you'd like to add to what I just said?
No, nothing further. Just always thankful for the participation of our committee members, including Milton and Jen. We really appreciate your insight and participation each year. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Jen. And stay right here. Do you have a COVID-19 update for us?
This one's even shorter. We just had a few minor things to talk about in the last Friday meeting. We're going to have one meeting in July and then go back to 2 in August, in potential anticipation of some things that might change at the state level with recommendations related to COVID as we ramp up for the next school year. The committee will be ready in case something changes, and that committee's done a lot of great work this year, and I'm really been pleased to work with them. Great people.
Great, and thank you for your work too. Really appreciate it. Let's see, anything else for the greater good before we say a final farewell to Cheryl and last meeting of the school year, see y'all at the top of the mountain kind of message? Jamie, anything?
I would just say, Cheryl, don't completely check out. There could be a time where we call you back for, a year or two. Just keep us on your radar. But truly, thank you for everything. Go ahead.
I have some ways to keep in touch, so I'm not too worried about it. Go Braves.
Right. Good. Thank you. Really do appreciate all of your expertise you've lent us over the years, not only as a teacher, CTA president, but board member, and just a great supporter of our community and our district. Really
Thank
means
you.
a lot. So thank you.
We will miss you.
I'll miss all of you, but thank you.
Look, you're not gonna miss us too much because we'll stay in touch.
No, I'll see you. I know. I'm going nowhere.
And the other thing, weather-wise this weekend for commencement, last year we did have to use our rain date and switch to Sunday. Both days, it looks like there's a chance of rain, so we may just have to rain or shine, go for it. So stay tuned for that. And then the last thing I would just say is Jen reminded me, I didn't even talk about COVID in my presentation. How nice was that for once? But the good news is today, 0 cases in the district, over 4,000 people, 0 cases. So
Fabulous.
we're in a good place.
Great. Well, on that happy note, thank you for all of your work all year long, everybody. Obviously, we have a couple of meetings through the summer, but not quite like this. So what a year. Thank you. Thank you for everything. And hope to see everybody at the top of the mountain on Saturday or Sunday. Good night, everybody. Motions to adjourn, please.
Congratulations, Carlin.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motions, please. Michelle and Milton. Thanks very much, everybody. Good night.
Good night.